that is it from your sports desk for now. But let's continue with the conversation that we were having earlier with Artscape CEO Marlene Le Roux. This is as tributes continue to pour in for music legend Mama Madosini, as we really honor her legacy and her life. Marlene, it's just a pity we lost signal a little bit earlier on, but we've got you back again. I was just saying that, you know what becomes so sad is how many artists in this country become honored or are honored globally, but are not recognized within their own country, where we should be erecting statues in honor of this individual so that her legacy continues to live on. It would be an absolute travesty to know that one day when we ask a 15-year-old who Mama Madosini was and her contribution to music, that nobody will even know, or even know about Uchabe as well as Tolo. That in itself is a travesty. So how do we start practically putting together those programs to ensure that people know about her legacy, people know about these indigenous musical instruments, and perhaps can continue playing them because it's really unique to our country?
I think most important is that, as I said in the beginning, is that the concert that we staged with Dr. Madosini, and it was Thandeka Mpunyongo, was a young woman that actually staged it, and we produced it for her, and Dr. Madosini was part of the concert. It was this intergenerational concert. But most important, also the work that Dr. Du Plessis is doing. It must go out to our schools. It must be our indigenous instrumentalists must be introduced as part of the curriculum as well. As a country, we must first start also with our education department. Have music as a subject, and as part of that music as a subject, also being taught young people our indigenous instruments. And this is my fear, as you also have said it now, is that in years to come, we won't even know who was Dr. Madosini. So that it's not just going to be part of the universities that master students or PhDs been written on this particular Dr. Madosini's work, but it's important that we are instilling this in our teachers. It's part of our teachers' curriculum. So it must be a systemic change. The theatre is important. Theatres must be part of our indigenous landscape, but it's important that we have the programs. Disu Plessis, who's a personal friend of mine, and also I've been part of the curriculum developing that particular model, but most important that the teachers being trained. As I said in the beginning, in the 80s, I was a music student of UWC, the University of the Western Cape. I've been privileged to work with Dr. Madosini. I've been privileged also to travel with Dr. Du Plessis all over the world. But we can't be only introducing our musicians to the world, but in South Africa and in Africa, we don't pay homage to our iconic figures that uphold. But Dr. Madosini is one of our last legends that uphold the Xhosa tradition through the instruments and through her stories. Important, it was also her stories that she told the nation. And through being on stage, it was not just her instruments, it was her life that she shared with the audience and with us that staged that. So it's important that we need to look at it was a life, it was her stories, it was imparting of the culture and the history through her music, through her practicing to our nation. And the question that we need to ask here, how are we going to hand over this baton to the Thandekas? So important is that we need to hold the sacred, the economic empowerment as well, because people need to, as artists, people can't just say we're upholding the culture, we're upholding the music, if there is not ring fencing that particular culture and saying, but the Dr. Du Plessis, Thandeka of the world, Thandi Swartboy of the world, how can we have programs which are paid by government to you, that you can go around in the country training teachers? Because I believe in teachers' programs. And I believe that it must be in schools. And I believe that we must have programs in our communities, but the broader sense, because we can't put music into pockets. Classical music is also a classical artist, instrumentalist, is Dr. Madosini.
Marlene, now I don't want to make South Africans shallow or seem shallow, but money is an important thing. Money, remuneration, and rich and wealth and fame is an important thing. Now, how then do you teach a 15-year-old who knows about Kabza de Small, DJ Maphorisa, who knows about eNCA and Casper Nyovest, who knows about all the Kwaito stars, who knows about all of these artists who they see making a lot of money, see booking gigs all over the place, all over the country at least, and on the continent. You know, they're seeing the Burna Boys of the world, they're seeing the Drakes of the world. How do you convince that 15-year-old that doing uhati, umkhupe, as well as istolotolo can get them to that particular level? And how do you convince them that first start with the passion and the money will follow? You can also be as famous as these other artists that you've grew up listening to doing Xhosa traditional music.
I'm smiling. How do you get known also as a musician is to play it on music, on our radios. And here I want to take a challenge to our radio stations. Play the music of Dr. Madosini. Play the music of our traditional artists. There are recordings. If there are not recordings of our traditional artists who is still alive, please let's have an active program to do that. There are the means. We have infrastructures. It is just that we need to have the political power and that we need to strive to do it. So it's important that our ear needs to be developed. We are so much into the American music that we forget that we need to promote our own artists, our traditional music, all over, across the board. It can't just be on paper. Music needs to be listened to. Music needs to be inculcated to, and with the young listeners as well, so that it is not just Kwaito, it's not just the DJs that needs to be known. It is important that our traditional artists, and then very important that our institutions like Samrose, that needs to become active again, that the recording artist needs to get again royalties. So I don't even want to ask whether the children of Dr. Madosini or the family members is going to get royalties from her music. That's another debate that needs to have.
Yeah, we'll leave it there for now, Marlene, but thank you so much for your insights this morning. Artscape CEO Marlene Le Roux just honoring the life and the legacy of Mama Madosini. We'll continue that tribute as we continue with the show.